Chapter 79, The Old Soul. You know, I remember when I was around 19 years old, I tried to start a diary, but I only made one entry, and I lost the diary then. Don't know how, don't know when. Although I think about it sometimes. I wish I could read it now. Why is that, Michael? Because, Gabe, just because. So many of my thoughts haven't been invested in thinking about me being my old self, trying to be who I was back then. Truth is, I don't remember all that much. So that diary entry would have been the only thing I would have had left of those days, to truly remind me of what being my old self meant. I ain't gonna remember now what I wrote back then. Even if I just made one entry, I really felt like I tried to put my soul into it, trying to be poetic. Or as poetic as someone of that age can get. Or someone like me could get. So it would mean a lot to me, just would. Pity. Continuing on, the lower level felt so senseless and soulless to Michael that he felt like he had stepped into some long-lost forgotten world. In the building's history, this place would have probably been represented as a gap in a timeline, only filled out with question marks. The place looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Being here felt like entering the deepest, darkest, and least used subway station in New York at 12 o'clock, midnight. But then as the ground beneath gave way, you were dropped into an even older forgotten tunnel that hadn't seen light since the mid-19th century. That, or a massive Indian burial ground, or okay enough with the 80s movie references. There was a lot of debris and crates everywhere, and there were lights shining down from above, all isolated from each other like islands in a sea of darkness. And within their beams, the lights were exposing a level of density in the air, with air particles so thickly packed together, felt like one would probably need to hack through it with a machete to get past. Great. Now I'm looking for the lost ark here. I guess I'll be able to notice it with all the dead rats laying around. I thought you didn't want any more 80s movies. Shut up, Gabe. As Michael continued riding forward, he found himself having difficulty finding the bomb. The whole place was stacked with giant crates, which were mostly obstructing everything in Michael's path in finding the damn thing. Still continuing with his search, Michael thought of giving up the possibility of crossing anyone down here, for there was absolutely no sign of life anywhere. And Michael began to wonder if any of Mr. Dorian or Mr. Parsley's men had even shown up at all. If it was brought in by a semi, maybe the truck could still be attached, and I can try driving the damn thing out of here and away, and hope it doesn't blow up before exiting Manhattan. You could drive it off the Williamsburg Bridge. Ah, shit. That probably would be the best thing to do. Then something caught Michael's eye beneath one of the lights overhead. Michael came across a stacked pile of broken crates and gin bottles. And what really caught his eye was a fedora peeking out, which was tucked away between the crates. What is it about these hats that makes it look so damn dignified to be wearing? As he pulled it out, he found it covered in dust, a lot of dust, that must have taken an immeasurable amount of time, what feels like, to build up. At first, Michael imagined it might have been Mr. Dorian's, but if it had been, it had to have been down here some 30 to 40 odd years. That couldn't have been possible. Feeling a bit spiffy then, Michael felt a strange urge to try to hat on for size, even though this is one of those worst times to be doing such things. So as he decided to do so, he took a deep breath and blew on it to remove all the layers of dust that had built up, and found himself coughing and hacking up a lung practically as the dust spread over his nose and mouth and went in deep. So stupid of me. Michael was in tears now. Once he was done resenting that idea, Michael then decided to continue looking for the bomb. Stupid hat. They're also so bland looking, but also decided to hold on to it for whatever reason. Although it's mine now, and I always wanted one. And as he placed it onto his head, even though still way too dusty to be doing so, a strange feeling came over Michael. And with it, a strange sense of being, another sense of self. For Michael, he had only faintly ever considered before, but one that was very revealing to Michael, very. You know, being born, I always felt like I skipped a generation. Honestly, I've always felt like an old soul, and I think I should have been born a part of my parents' generation instead, being born in the mid 20s instead of being born in the mid 50s. Because, I don't know, something about my parents' generation just seems so much more romantic and refined, like, and other stuff. Take this hat, for instance. No one wears hats like these no more. Hats are such dignified things to wear, and the only thing you'd find my generation wearing is maybe baseball caps. When it comes to hats, the things that kids would wear, children, no one wants to look dignified anymore wearing something like this because no one wants to look old anymore. I call someone Mr. So and so today and they look at me, then look around, and then they'll say something stupid, supposedly funny, like, hey, call me Fred. Calling me Mr. So and so makes me think you're referring to my old man. Pretty much what I'm saying is, nobody wants to be an adult no more. Nobody does. Not nobody anymore. As much as Michael was partial to thinking and acting like a 30-something-year-old adolescent, there was still a major part of him, another side of him, that felt completely different. What do you want me to say? They were a generation where men really were men, and not stupid kids. And part of what makes someone a mature adult isn't just acting like one, but being one. Since growing up, I've noticed how people my age like to act like adults, but I can tell they're not, and are still really stupid children inside, and really, really, really immature ones, but pretending to be adults, just pretending to be. Michael now started thinking about what his old Uncle Francis had once said to him. There's no such thing as being an adult, huh? Nah, I'm changing my mind on that matter. My Uncle Francis, what did he know? He was just a drunkard, an alcoholic loser, eh? And what makes you know now, Michael? Since you're at an adult age, no longer a kid no more, even though you still act like one. I got my sense of what it means to be one. I got that, and I've been through a lot in my life. A hell of a lot, and if anything, that makes you one. Trials you go through in life, trials you face and survive, and not you, Gabe, nor anyone can argue that I haven't had mine. Michael now spent a melancholy minute thinking about the hard knocks he had to roll with most of his life. My mom abandoning me, my pops beating the crap out of me for years just so he can raise me to be as much of a psycho as he was. Then from age 15 to around my early 20s, I had some good times. The only good times, even though I still spent much of that time being in a gang doing nothing but fighting everybody I came across. But then after those happy days, I went away to prison and then spent years upon years fighting off suicidal urges with a stick. Yeah, I've had a messed up life. No doubt about it. Not saying the worst, anyone could have it, but still bad. After a minute thinking about all that, Michael started getting emotional. You want to know something else I liked about that generation? They ain't like people now. They weren't the generation that tried to hide who they were by being stoic. They went through shit, a lot of shit, which is what made them who they are. And they felt proud to wear it. Today, let's say, with tough guy acts, fuckers will try hard to be hard and cold, but they're really just pussies. They really haven't been through that much to be who they like to seem to be. To be really hard, you wouldn't try to seem hard. You'd be nearly an emotional basket case. My parents' generation, they were a lot more like that, which made them more human than my sorry sort are today, which is what also made them much more melodramatic, almost ridiculously much more. Fine, there's that too, Gabe, but I like that. It would suit my nature more to be that way. I'm really an overly emotional basket case myself anyways, and it really would suit me better if I could always be laughing and crying along with people, instead of trying to hold it all in not to scare people off. People are way too reserved today, and either they're macho assholes all posing to be hard like all those fuckers I have to continually deal with on the streets, or they're two-faced assholes like Stumpy and everyone here in Uptown. Wish I could just let go and really express how I feel most of the time. Instead of being all stoic yourself, huh? Fine, I am that way on the outside, I know. I am all stone cold faced and expressionless most of the time, trying to be all cooler than ice cold and shit, leading the Steve McQueen example. But that's me on the outside. On the inside, well, kinda like with Nikki earlier. It still feels strange that a woman never could have imagined I'd be scared of shit. But that's just what she saw of me on the outside. I ain't that way. I ain't. I really, really wish I can just cry all the time. Cry all the time? Yeah, Gabe, I want to just cry all the fucking time, all fucking day long, all night long. That would be me, really be me. And me expressing myself to the fullest, expressing myself without constantly worrying what other people would think or would judge me for. When you go through a lot of shit, how can you help but to be an emotional basket case? People back then went through a lot more, which also made them more neurotic and crazy. Well, why don't you go through a Great Depression and then the biggest and baddest war ever fought on Earth and try to come out of it sane? There were a generation that saw nothing but violence, total violence, with a world that had to wage it out for a long stretch, starting from First World War on through. And even though I believe as much as I do about violence as being like God's own hand lashing at us to break us from our fictitious selves and bringing us to our truest and bluest nature, even though I do believe in it, too much of it, I don't know. Trials such as those can either make you or break you, and break you seriously. But then again, no matter how tough you are, too much of it, and anyone can be broken. Funny, this is all making me think about that stuff I was thinking at Big Dicks, about socio-political messages expressing the zeitgeist through way of cartoons, really made for children but really made by adults. And the thing about cartoons of their time, my parents' generation, they were all nothing but a cat and a mouse, or a rabbit and a rabbit hunter, some type of pairing of two likes. They wouldn't get along very well if put together. Popeye and Bluto, two sailors. And with those two, with those cartoons, you'd have nothing but one episode after another of them doing nothing but fucking each other up all the time. With mallets and branding irons and axes, doing nothing but going psycho on each other, just beating the ever-loving shit out of each other until one couldn't take it no more and called it quits, going insane. Michael thought about all that and now thought if he'd want to be a character in any of those cartoons, fuck no. That Tom and Jerry shit got way too out of hand, and not just some of the time, but all of the time, for that's all you'd expect from them. They did nothing but chase each other around with axes all the livelong day. If you were to be seeing anything like that today, you'd be seeing it in slasher movies, not some cartoon made for children. Now it's just G.I. Joes with snake people and laser beams and Van Halen shit, hunky gay shit. Michael now took the fedora hat off his head and really wondered if he would want to live in those times. Maybe I should be a bit thankful I didn't have to deal with a world like that. Coming up in an age like that must have really created some monsters. Stuff me and Nikki could never imagine. Michael then threw away the fedora hat and sighed, yeah, fuck the past. Who would seriously want to live in that age? As much as I feel like I should have been one of them. Who seriously wants to go through an age that had a Great Depression and a Great World War? Who would? And that started making Michael think about the present. What am I thinking? As if the world we live in now is any better. The world is just as bad now in its own way. In today's world, the fears and hardships like being poorer than dirt, starving to death, or being sent to go fight some war that's claiming millions and millions of lives. Now, there's crime. Lots and lots of crime all over, making it scary for people to step outside even out of their front doors. And also, there's that whole Cold War business and how we're probably going to end up nuking each other into an oblivion and have nothing left. And now that made Michael think about the future. World wars and Great Depressions are one thing, an age of nothing but crime is something else. But then there's what will be left If that nuclear holocaust shit ever was to take place, which will really send this world into chaos far beyond anything a world war or this age of rage business could be able to produce. A hell simply unimaginable. Something that would be beyond the hell the world had to deal with my parents' generation in the 30s and 40s, whatever I've had to deal with in the 70s and 80s, for looking into the 90s. If that's the direction the world goes into, would I be prepared for it? Would any of my stupid ass generation today would? I don't know. I really don't know. And this all really started to make Michael wonder. Something now felt off, seriously off. Not with just his thoughts of the times he was living in, but the direction it was all leading towards. Something now felt off about this whole age of rage business. Off with Mr. Dorian and his plans. My lad in the street with all the crime and shit, let's face it, let's face the facts. They're a very unorganized group, committing a whole lot of violence with no purpose to it, like that repo man chainsawing down lampposts and shit. What's that gonna serve in a greater scheme of things? But what will this age of rage serve in the end? I don't know. Violence breaking people away from their fictitious selves and growing a pair, rising up and claiming something that maybe should be rightfully theirs and making them into more of the, I don't know. I think that man has something he might feel like is righteous, but what he's doing, but now Michael started thinking about the National Guardsmen and seeing them, and he had seen how they planned to handle the whole age of rage business and squash it before it having much of a chance to make any difference. Fine, I get this. He wants the common lot, my lot, to rise up and fight back against the man. But come the fuck on. Fact of the matter was, as big and as bad as all the gangs were on the streets, there was a bigger and badder mofo now here, making sure nothing was to change. Nothing. The U.S. government, with their head honcho, President Ronnie, that's who. In the end, this was all still futile. For you're only as tough as your enemy will allow you to be. So what difference was this age of rage going to make? It's not. It's really an exercise in futility. Rising up and taking back what rightfully yours? I've tried to do that tonight, and what have I claimed? Nothing. I'm still going to die or still find myself going back to prison. Nothing is still going to change with all this. So, something is off. I feel like I'm missing out on something here. Mr. Dorian might be a real psycho nutbag, but what did he really think this was all going to do? A nutcase, yes, but the man ain't stupid. If Mr. Dorian is looking for revenge, what is simply blowing up 1999 going to do? I mean, what high prominent figures are up there on the 54th floor partying it up that would catch Mr. Dorian's interest? If he really wanted revenge, how much damage would killing them cause when most of his enemies should be in D.C. and at the Pentagon, I'm presuming? Why come here and bomb this building? And then there's the age of rage. Even with all the riots going on, how much damage can that cause now that the National Guardsmen have been called into action? I mean, those rioters on the streets are just a bunch of punks like me. They're not soldiers. They can't take on the U.S. military. So, what's Mr. Dorian's overall plan here? I feel like something else is going on. If Mr. Dorian was looking for revenge, he'd have to be planning something greater and far more scarier to really make a difference. But what? As Michael continued circumnavigating between all these giant crates and forklifts and eventually even coming across an old Studebaker, he took one last glance around and found it. The bomb. Okay, there it is. But, now what do I do? There's no one here and I can't touch that thing. Michael quickly rode over to the bomb. It wasn't as big as he thought it would be. It had more of a cone shape and it looked like it was detachable from the flat end. It looked like a tip of a missile. Michael rode up and circled the bomb to see what else he could make out. There were no panels or anything in sight that could give him a visual of if this bomb was armed or not. But then he realized something else. This bomb had strange lettering on it. As Michael looked closer, he saw P13 Divinia? This wasn't exactly what Michael was expecting. Michael could tell it was Russian, the lettering, and he also saw the symbol of a red star on it. But the question now was, what was it doing here? That's Russian, all right. But why would Mr. Dorian go so far as to get a Russian bomb if he can have access to American ones? But then Michael saw another symbol on the bomb that made him realize he wasn't looking at what he'd be expecting to find down here. It was a yellow circle, and inside of it there was a black circle in the middle, and at 3 points extending from 10, 2, and 6 o'clock positions along the black circle were triangles. And as he scratched his head for a second, it then came to him exactly what he was looking at. Are you fucking shitting me?